In response to my first video where I discussed my experience with medium format cameras over a span of 2 years, I'm making this video because I got absolutely cooked in the comments and I have to address some of them, okay? In part one, I did a photo shoot with the Hasselblad X2D up against the Sony A1 and the Canon R5 Mark II, which are two of the best full frame cameras available. I then proceeded to compare them. And that's where I got absolutely roasted because I didn't match the white balance in all the photos. And look, that's totally fair, pure laziness on my part, but I do shoot with auto white balance for a reason, and I'll explain why later on. And as a bonus, I'm going to print large. I'm gonna take a photo from the medium format in full frame. I'm gonna print it on my new Canon Pro 1100 printer. I'm gonna take it to my boy's house. I'm gonna take it to my mom's. All right, we're gonna get some different eyeballs on these photos, and I wanna see if they can tell the difference between the two. So let's get started. So this video is not sponsored, but if you wanna support me and my channel and get better at Flash at the same time, well, you can check out my off-camera Flash mini course where I show you how I approach my camera settings and Flash power, how I tackle that harsh afternoon sun, how I find the perfect light placement, how I approach my compositions, and so much more. Link will be down in the description. Okay, so the first photo that we're gonna revisit is the one of Samantha with the slit lighting across her face. These are the ones from the Hasselblad, and these are already color corrected. Let me show you how I color correct my images. So this one is not corrected. This is on the Sony. What I do is just hit the eyedropper tool. I find the neutral point in the photo where it could be like white, it could be a shirt or anything. Here in the background, it's pretty, it's all the same. And you'll see the red, green, and blue. You just want that to pretty much be the same or really close to the same number. So here we've got 9.8, 9.1. I mean, that's pretty close. That's a pretty good match. Yeah, the whites look, yeah, that's a pretty good match right there. So that's how I go about finding white balance. I've been doing this for a while. You guys will probably dissect it and tell me that I'm doing it all wrong, but it's always worked for me. So on the left, I have the A7R5, and on the right, I have the Hasselblad X2D. And now, because we're doing more of an apples to apples comparison here, all right, on the Hasselblad, it always imports as camera standard in terms of the profile. And that's how I left it in the last video, because why change it? Everything, I was just going for more of like, hey, straight out of camera, this is what you get. But we're gonna just switch it to Adobe Color because the Sony's also in Adobe Color. I might adjust the white balance one more time because switching the profile seemed like the image looks a little bit more yellow now. There we go. All right, both images are in Adobe Color now. Now, the big thing that I talked about with medium format, or at least the thing that I noticed the most, was the tonal transitions. I wanted to, there was something about that filmic look. Now that the white balance matched up, I can see it on this screen. I can see there's a nice tonal, just look at across the face, into the hair, into the background. Look at how much more smoother the highlight to shadow roll off transition is here. From the highlight to the cheek, to the hair, to the backdrop. Look at here. Yeah, I think a lot of the magic that I'm trying to describe here is all in those midtones. The image just feels more real, more lifelike on the medium format. I'm gonna switch both images to camera standard profile because that's how the Hasselblad comes right out of the box. It always comes camera standard or Adobe standard. So I'm gonna switch to Sony and the Hasselblad. And Adobe standard is just a more flatter profile with just less contrast. You're gonna notice it here, the colors are less saturated. And I'm not gonna lie, I think the Sony looks better in Adobe standard. The thing is that I still see the smoother transitions from highlight to shadow. On the Hasselblad, it still has that filmic quality to it that I love. Now we have the photo of Julia that I shot in the studio. To correct the white balance here, I zoomed into the white part of her eye and found the neutral spot there. It did a pretty good job of matching both of them. Now zooming in, Sony A1 85 1.4, and on the right, you got the Hasselblad. Both are in Adobe Color. Zooming in, I want you to look next to the light streak on her face and how smooth the transition is going from the shadows on the medium format. It's also slightly more detailed and all that, but not gonna lie here, the full frame is definitely holding its own with this lighting setup. Comparing to the Sony file that I showed in part one, I mean, yeah, it's kind of the same thing. The medium format file, yeah, it's more detailed, has more of a rich quality to it, but it's only really noticeable when you start to zoom in, which only goes to show how freaking good these full frame sensors have gotten. What's impressive, this camera, Sony A1, it's a fully stacked sensor created for speed, and it still could put out top-notch image quality, which is something I've been saying for a long time. But let's just be honest, the straight out of camera colors are kind of ass. Now for this next one, I'm gonna switch it up and I'm gonna go to the GFX 102 because I used it for this comparison as well against the Sony a7R V. Let's zoom in. I already color corrected them to match. Let's zoom in to 100% on both. You know what? I think that more than anything, this is a good example of what micro contrast is, what 3D pop actually looks like. Sure, on medium format, it helps that we have a really good prime lens in front of a 100 megapixel medium format sensor, but on the Sony side, I'm using arguably their sharpest mid-range zoom lens. I know it's not the same, but on their highest resolution sensor, and just look at how much more flatter the image is on the left when compared to the right. Look at the subtle details in the skin on the Fuji. I mean, just right here, look at the bridge of the nose leading to the under eye. Look at all the detail and the colors and contrast here leading to the cheeks and the hair. The richness, the depth. The Fuji looks absolutely unbelievable here. And I think partially has to do with medium format, but also a big part of that is the lens as well. So you put a really good lens in front of your full frame sensor, and you're gonna be able to get an image that looks like this as well. Okay, so I know I said I was gonna print these images and go to my mom's, go to my friends, see if they could tell the difference. But the reality is no one is gonna be able to tell the difference. So I did my first test prints on the Canon Pro 1100, and oh my God, these files are beautiful. But as you see, 17 by 22 is not that large. But see, what I was gonna do is crop in on the face really tight, and so that you could really see the details of the image. But the reality is nobody's gonna be able to tell the difference between these files. These cameras are just too high resolution. You're gonna need to blow these, you're gonna have to blow them up for anyone to see any difference. So I'm gonna abandon this plan. Now I wanna quickly address some of the comments in my previous video talking about, like why I shoot auto white balance. And there is no good reason. There is no good reason for that. I think that is just the type of person that I am. I just like to keep things as simple as possible. Like when I'm shooting at the studio, I'm tunnel vision locked in when I have another human being in front of me and I'm using lights and I'm filming myself. I'm all over the place. I'm not worried about the grade card that's sitting on my shelf over there because it takes 3 seconds to adjust my white balance in post and I'm already mentally scrambled. I'm everywhere. But that's still not a good enough excuse. It's just a bad habit of mine. And what's funny is that I'm a perfectionist with almost everything else. But with this, I kind of overlook it because it doesn't make sense ever shooting auto white balance in the studio. We have all the most advanced cameras and they all suck in the studio. They do a pretty good job outdoors. The studio will always trick a camera in its auto white balance. So now that still doesn't explain why I didn't just color correct the photos for the video. And I could have done that. But, I tried to take the approach of approaching this from a non-technical perspective, like I said at the beginning, but who am I kidding? You can't approach this from a non-technical way, especially if I'm talking about tonal transitions, which inevitably will lead me into color science and all that. And so, yeah, I should have definitely compared them. I've done this before, actually. I've done a whole color science video that never saw the light of day because I shot with every system, and even though I was matching the white balances, I was still getting off. There were some that appeared more green than these, and it still required me to match them in post. And I was just like, well, what's the point of putting so much work into trying to get apples to apples comparison when I'm still gonna have to do some correcting? And I was just trying to avoid that. That's a bad look. But you know what? At the end of the day, I hope that part one and this video helps you understand a little bit more of the nuances of medium format and when people talk about the medium format look, what that consists of. It gets really nuanced and there's so many videos out there on that. And personally, I don't really like getting into all this technical stuff because I'm the first person to tell you that all this stuff don't matter. All this technical
this stuff doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Like I'll get into it, and I like to, I want you guys to see what I see, but none of this shit matters. Lighting, posing, composition is what actually matters. I could have shot the same photo with the crop sensor camera and I still would have picked it simply because of her pose. Her head was tilted a little bit differently. Her head was down, her chin down a little bit, and the light was falling on her face nicely on the Sony. I'm choosing a Sony over the Hasselblad every day, any day of the week. This is what actually matters. It doesn't matter the camera, the lens, it matters. All the other things matter more. The lighting, composition, posing. This is what actually matters. So, I got to get back to doing what I do best. I feel like I thrive better when speaking about technique and lighting. That is where I thrive on the technical aspect, on the technical side. I feel like I'm pretty proficient, but my audience, y'all, you guys are on a different level. You guys got it down. Maybe this is what happens when you don't go to school for photography. You just kind of do everything and learn everything on your own. I'm just not. I feel like I'm a pretty technical photographer, but I'm not as technical as some of you guys out there. But I'm just grateful that the technique aspect, like just the actual technique is something that I feel I'm pretty strong at. And at the end of the day, again, that's what actually matters. All this, I don't want to argue about pixel peeping and this and that. For medium format, you have to be able to appreciate the details, the nuances of these files. If that is something that you're not interested in and you don't see value in that, there's no reason. There's no reason to spend more money and get into something like this. I could care less what you shoot. I don't care. There's nothing in it for me to, if I could give you my best advice, if you're still shooting full frame, you're shooting a really good full frame camera and you want to get this look, you want to get this 3D look that I get on medium format with these lenses in combination, get yourself a lens that has the characteristics that I was talking about, right? Like micro contrast, that has that ability to capture an image in a non-sterile way. Because a lot of full frame lenses nowadays are just made to be so perfect that it just renders a more of a flat image. And not everybody will notice these things. But when you're zooming into images like I am and really paying attention to the details, getting a lens that has these characteristics on a full frame camera, you're going to be, it's going to be really hard to really tell the difference between that in a medium format file at the end of the day, especially after exporting. So that is all I have to say about that. I need to get my butt back in doing actual photography because FOMO hits me really hard. I see all this new gear coming out. I feel like I need to be in front. I feel like I need to do something with it, but it's not something that brings me joy at the end of the day. I'll put out a video and I'm just like, I never want to look at this thing ever again because I know what actually matters to me, and it's this stuff, portraits, lighting. This is what like fuels me. I got to get back into it, man. I got to do it more consistently. Yeah. All right, man. I'll talk to you later.